Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are doing something a little different. Usually when we talk about history or politics, we're looking at, the big sweeping movements, the wars, the treaties, the elections.
All the stuff that makes it into the headlines.
Exactly. But today, we're going to look at the invisible machinery beneath all of that. We are stepping out of the bright lights of the modern world and plunging straight into the fog. We are going back to Victorian London.
And it is a very specific kind of fog we are dealing with today. I mean, it isn't just the weather. It's a moral fog.
A moral fog, I like that.
We are analyzing the narrative landscape of Anne Perry's novel, Traitors Gate. And I think landscape is absolutely the right word here, because this isn't just a story about people. It's a story about the terrain they inhabit.
Right. And for everyone listening, you really shouldn't let the murder mystery label fool you. We aren't just here to find out who killed who with a candlestick in the library.
No, not at all.
We are using this text to map out the anatomy of a conspiracy. We have a dual crisis here, a personal tragedy that threatens to destroy a family, and a geopolitical leak that threatens to topple the British Empire's hold on Africa.
It is a perfect storm, really. On one side, you have the inner circle, this terrifying sort of secret mechanism of control within the British aristocracy.
We'll get into them.
Oh, we will. And on the other side, you have this scramble for Africa, which was essentially, I mean, you could call it the Cold War of the 19th century. Everyone wants a piece.
And standing right in the crosshairs of all this is our protagonist, Thomas Pitt. He's the superintendent of Bow Street now. He's climbed the ladder. But as we're going to see, the higher you climb in Victorian society,
the thinner the air gets, and the sharper the knives. It's a fascinating setup because you have this rigid class structure right on the surface. Everyone knows their place. Everyone is supposed to follow the rules. But underneath, there's this churning current of political intrigue, hidden corruption, and these, secret societies.
So, our mission today is to decode the opening movements of this investigation. We are going to break down the mechanics of what Perry calls the inner circle, the secret society within the elite. We're going to look at a high-stakes leak in the Colonial Office, and we're going to analyze the character dynamics that really drive this story forward.
And we are working from just the opening chapters of the book, so we're really setting the stage for the entire investigation. It's the perfect place to start.
Yeah, it's all about the setup.
It is, because it establishes the stakes before the body count really starts to rise. It forces us to ask questions about loyalty, about the cost of ambition, and, what happens when the people charged with running the world decide to run it just for themselves.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start where the book starts. Section 1, the personal stakes.
It opens in a surprisingly peaceful way, doesn't it?
It really does. After everything we've read about the grime of Victorian London, the cobblestones, the horse manure, the soot everywhere, this felt disorienting. We find Thomas Pitt in his garden.
And this isn't just any garden. He's moved. He's been promoted to superintendent. He's replaced Micah Drummond, and he's got this new house. It's a symbol of his success.
A huge symbol. The text spends a lot of time on the sensory details here, and that feels so deliberate. The sun fading on an old apple tree, the moths fluttering in the twilight.
The sound of his wife, Charlotte, upstairs with the children. It all creates this sense of sanctuary. Pitt is sitting there enjoying a rare Saturday evening off. He's at peace.
It feels like he's finally exhaled, He's made it. He has the house, the job, the stability he's been working for his entire life.
But that sanctuary is a narrative device, isn't it? In noir or crime fiction, you establish the Eden solely so you can destroy it. The peace establishes the stakes. It shows us exactly what Pitt has to lose if things go wrong.
That's a great point. He isn't just a detective on the beat anymore. He has something real, something tangible to protect.
And the threat to that peace arrives almost immediately. The ghost, as you called it, walks right through the French doors.
Enter Matthew Desmond. Now, this is where the class dynamics, which are always, always huge in Anne Perry's work, really come into play. We need to pause here and really unpack the relationship between Pitt and Matthew, because it's not normal for the time period, is it?
Not at all. It's a sociological anomaly. To understand the tension in that room, you have to look at Pitt's origins. Pitt wasn't born a gentleman. He was the son of the gamekeeper on the Desmond estate.
So, strictly speaking, in the Victorian hierarchy, they should have been worlds apart. One lives in the manor, the other lives in the cottage on the edge of the woods. There's a gulf between them.
A massive gulf. Legally and socially, yes. But Sir Arthur Desmond Matthew's father was a unique man. He was a radical in his own quiet way, He allowed Pitt and his son Matthew to be educated together.
And it's a huge deal.
A huge deal. They played together. They learned together. They were, for all intents and purposes, like brothers.
A gamekeeper's son sharing a classroom with the young master. I mean, that just blurs all the lines that Victorian society says should be rigid and uncrossable.
It is almost unheard of. But then there's the estrangement. We learn they haven't spoken in 15 years.
15 years. And the text suggests this is largely Pitt's doing, right? It's his pride.
It is. Think about the psychology of that. Pitt felt he couldn't go back to the estate, to them, until he was successful enough to bridge that social gap on his own terms.
He didn't want a handout.
Exactly. He wanted to return as a man of honor and achievement, not just the servant's son looking for a favor or reminding them of his humble origins.
Which is so human, isn't it? That'll show them mentality. He wanted to prove he was worthy of their kindness. But the tragedy is, by the time he's ready to go back, by the time he's a superintendent with a house and a garden, it's too late.
It's far too late. Matthew isn't there to congratulate him.
No. The text says Matthew looks terrible. All the laughter is bleached out of him. He brings tragic news. Sir Arthur Desmond is dead.
And this is where the mystery really kicks in.
Yeah.
Because there's the official story, and then there's what Matthew insists is a reality.
Okay, so the official story. What are the police saying?
The official story is neat and tidy. Sir Arthur died at the Morton Club in London. The cause.
Yeah.
An overdose of laudanum.
Laudanum, that's essentially liquid opium, right? It was everywhere in the Victorian era.
Yes, it was the aspirin of the 19th century, but much, much more dangerous. It was opium dissolved in alcohol. People took it for headaches, for hysteria, for insomnia, for almost anything.
A real cure-all.
But the rumor mill is already spinning. The doctor and the club members are saying Sir Arthur was senile, that he was becoming demented, maybe drank too much brandy and just took the wrong dose in a confused state.
So the narrative is, old man loses his mind, tragical accident. It wraps everything up in a neat little bow. No further questions.
Precisely. But Matthew isn't buying it. Not for a second. He tells Pitt that his father was sane, healthy, and honorable. He barely drank, and he certainly wasn't the type to be dosing himself with laudanum.
So Matthew is convinced this wasn't an accident. He believes it was murder.
He's certain of it.
But it's not just murder, is it? It's a very specific kind of erasure. And this brings us to section 2, the inner circle.
This is the real adversary, the inner circle.
It sounds so ominous. Is this based on real historical groups, or is it pure fiction?
It feels like a composite. Composite of various secret societies and gentlemen's clubs that certainly existed, though Perry amplifies the malevolence for the story. According to Matthew, Sir Arthur was a member.
So he was one of them.
He was. And originally he thought it was a benevolent society. You know, wealthy gentlemen pooling their resources for anonymous charity building orphanages, funding hospitals, that sort of thing.
Which fits the whole Victorian ideal of noblesse oblige, the duty of the rich to help the poor.
On the surface, yes. But Sir Arthur discovered the rot underneath. He found out it wasn't about charity at all. It was a power brokering cabal, about insider trading, sharing wealth among themselves, and political manipulation.
So a classic old boys network on steroids.
Exactly. But Sir Arthur made a fatal mistake. He had a conscience. He began publicly criticizing the circle.
He broke the code of silence.
He shattered it. He exposed how they were influencing government policy, specifically regarding the South Africa Company, for their own financial gain. He was pointing out that they were ignoring the welfare of Africans and even British interests just to line their own pockets.
That is a very dangerous game to play with very powerful men. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, and you certainly don't expose the hand that's holding all the puppet strings.
Extremely dangerous. And Matthew points out the brilliance, the dark brilliance of the inner circle's retaliation.
Yeah.
They don't just kill you.
No.
They destroy your reputation.
This is the part I found truly chilling, because if they just shot him in the street, he becomes a martyr, doesn't he? People might start looking into his accusations. Why was Sir Arthur shot?
Exactly. Questions would be asked.
Okay.
But by staging a laudanum overdose and spreading rumors of senility, they completely nullify his criticism. If Sir Arthur is dismissed as mad or demented, then everything he said about the circle
Is also dismissed as the ravings of a senile old man. It's weaponized gaslighting on a societal level. They didn't just kill the man, they erased his credibility.
it is incredibly effective. And Matthew realizes now, looking back, that there were warnings. He describes 2 previous incidents to Pitt that, in hindsight, were clearly assassination attempts.
Okay, let's walk through those because they really paint a picture of how dangerous these people are. The first one is the Underground incident.
The London Underground in the 1890s was a nightmare. I mean, it wasn't the clean electric tube we know today. It was steam trains running in tunnels. The air was thick with sulfur, smoke, and coal dust. The noise was deafening.
A perfect place for an accident.
A perfect place. Sir Arthur was on a crowded platform. As the train is coming in, roaring out of the tunnel, he feels a violent, deliberate shove in the small of his back.
Pushed right toward the tracks.
Right toward the edge. He was only saved because someone else, a stranger, hauled him back at the last second. But in the chaos, in the smoke, in the crowd, the attacker just vanished. It highlights the vulnerability of the individual against the faceless crowd.
Terrifying. And the second one, the horse incident.
Even more brazen, in a way. He's riding in his home village, a place he knows like the back of his hand, and suddenly a rider comes galloping out of control, driving Sir Arthur's horse into a stone wall.
And it looked like an accident.
It was staged to look like an accident caused by a drunken fool, but Sir Arthur was a master horseman. He knew it was deliberate. He told Matthew he knew the angle, the speed it was calculated to kill.
So we have a clear pattern of violence disguised as accidents.
And Pitt recognizes this pattern immediately. He knows the inner circle. He's tangled with them before in previous books in the series. He knows they're more than capable of this.
And despite the danger, and despite the fact that he has this nice, safe, new life with the apple tree and the garden, Pitt agrees to help.
He does. There is a great line where they talk about supping with the devil. Pitt agrees to take the case, effectively agreeing to use a long spoon.
What does that mean exactly, supping with the devil?
It's an old proverb. He who sups with the devil should have a long spoon. It means if you are going to engage with evil, if you're going to sit at the table with it, you need to keep your distance to avoid being corrupted or consumed yourself.
He knows what he's getting into.
He knows that by investigating the inner circle, he is putting a massive target on his own back and on his family's. But he can't walk away from the memory of the man who was like a father to him. The guilt is too strong. But he knows the cost.
This loyalty, this debt of honor, it's really the heartbeat of the book, but he's not in this alone. We have to talk about Charlotte, which brings us to Section 3, the domestic interlude.
Charlotte is such a vital character because she anchors Pitt. She's his moral and strategic compass.
The scene where she meets Matthew is fascinating. You have to remember, Pitt has never brought his two worlds together. Charlotte is highborn, she's from the aristocracy, but she married a policeman, which was a huge, scandalous step down socially. And Matthew
is from Pitt's past life as his servant son.
It's a collision of class identities in one living room, but Charlotte handles it perfectly.
She does. She enters the room, sees the raw grief on Matthew's face, and her social training just kicks in. But it's not just about manners, it's genuine empathy. She immediately organizes a quiet dinner, cold roast chicken fruit sorbet. Very simple.
And they keep the conversation to gardening. Now, some listeners might think that's just superficial. Why aren't they talking about the murder?
It's actually a sign of incredibly high emotional intelligence. She knows they need space for their grief. She doesn't force them to talk about the tragedy while they're eating. It's a very distinct high society skill, maintaining the surface to protect the emotional depths. She provides a moment of normalcy in a world that has just been turned completely upside down.
But later, after Matthew goes to bed, the truth comes out.
Yes. Pitt tells her everything. The inner circle, the murder, the warnings. And this is where we see Charlotte steal. She doesn't tell him to stop. She understands the injustice. But she gives him a very, very stark warning.
She tells him not to let his guilt make him rash.
Right. She points out that the inner circle is ruthless. And her logic is terrifyingly sound. If they're willing to kill one of their own, Sir Arthur Desmond, a gentleman, a baronet, a member of the establishment, then they will not hesitate for a single second to destroy a policeman like Pitt.
She's saying, don't bring a badge to a conspiracy, or maybe your authority means absolutely nothing to them.
Exactly. She warns him that they will try to provoke him, to make him emotional, to make him make a mistake. She sees the danger clearly, perhaps even more clearly than Pitt does, because she isn't blinded by the guilt of the past 15 years. She knows that in a war against the inner circle, being right isn't enough. You have to be smart.
Colder? More calculating.
You have to use that long spoon.
So we have the murder mystery set up. The stakes are clear. But the next morning, things get even more complicated. Matthew comes down to breakfast and drops a bombshell. This isn't just about his father.
No, not by a long shot. This brings us to Section 4, the treason. Matthew reveals he works for the Foreign Office. And he's there on official business, too.
Double duty.
He reveals that there is a traitor in the Colonial Office, Someone is leaking high-level, top-secret information to the German embassy.
Okay, now, we need to pause here and really dig into the deep part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
The text throws a lot of Victorian geopolitics at us, and if you don't know the context, it just sounds like noise. What exactly is going on in Africa in 1890?
It is the absolute height of the scramble for Africa. This is peak European imperialism. All the major powers are carving up the continent, and the British, under Prime Minister Lord Salisbury, are trying to figure out their grand strategy. Matthew explains that there are two competing visions for the British Empire in Africa.
What are the options on the table?
Option one is the big, ambitious one, the Cape to Cairo corridor.
Which means British domination from the very south of Africa, Cape Town, all the way up to Egypt in the north. A solid vertical line of red on the map.
Precisely. That was the dream of imperialists like Cecil Rhodes. But the obstacles are huge. It's 3,000 miles of terrain, jungles, deserts, mountains. You have to take Sudan. You have to deal with Equatoria, which is held by a German governor named Emin Pasha. And crucially, you have the German Empire in East Africa blocking the way.
So that's the aggressive expansionist strategy. What's the alternative?
The alternative is a diplomatic trade, conceding some of the north to the Germans and concentrating British power only in the south. And there's a specific, very strange bargaining chip on the table: Heligoland.
Now, in the text, Pitt is confused by this. He says, wait, isn't Heligoland in the North Sea? It sounds ridiculous. Why would you trade African territory for a rock off the coast of Germany?
It does sound ridiculous until you look at a naval chart from the period. Heligoland is a tiny island, but it sits right in the German Bight. It commands the approaches to the Elbe and Weser rivers, two of Germany's most important naval ports.
So it's strategically vital.
Hugely. It's a perfect spot for a naval base to blockade German ports in a time of war. The British had held it since the Napoleonic Wars, but the Germans, who were building up their own navy under Kaiser Wilhelm II, wanted it desperately.
So the British are thinking, we have this rock that really annoys the Germans. We'll give it back to them if they give us Zanzibar or other territories in Africa that we need for our Cape to Cairo plan.
That is the trade. It's classic realpolitik. But here's the problem. The entire negotiation relies on bluffing. The British need the Germans to think they're perfectly happy to walk away from the deal. But there is a leak.
The Germans know the British bargaining position.
They know everything. They know exactly what mineral deposits the British are after, and they know about the secret treaties being negotiated with native chiefs, specifically a king named Lobengula in Zambezia.
Lobengula, that's a name that comes up a lot in the text. Who was he?
He was the king of the Ndebele people. He controlled a vast, resource-rich area in what is now modern-day Zimbabwe. The British South Africa Company, led by Cecil Rhodes, was trying to get him to sign away the mining rights to his entire kingdom. It was a very duplicitous, very predatory negotiation.
So if the Germans know the details.
If they know how desperate the British are, or exactly what terms are being offered to Lobengula, they can go to him and offer a better deal. Or they can simply expose the British lies to him and scupper the whole thing.
So the leak is compromising the entire future of the British Empire in Africa. It's not just embarrassment, it's a strategic disaster.
It's a complete disaster. If the Germans undercut the British there, the Cape to Cairo dream dies. The Germans could end up dominating southern Africa instead.
And this critical information is coming out of the Colonial Office. Pitt asks the natural question, is the inner circle involved in this treason?
It's a logical leap, isn't it? If you have a secret society that manipulates politics and you have a secret political leak, are they connected?
But Matthew thinks, no. His initial reaction is that it doesn't make sense.
Matthew initially says no. His logic is that the inner circle is all about wealth and power. They profit from the British Empire being strong and expanding. Why would they help Germany? Why would they weaken their own cash cow?
But Pitt has a darker, perhaps more realistic view of how power works.
Pitt explains the complexity of the web. He introduces this concept of invisible power. He says you might have a junior clerk in the office who is secretly a very powerful man in the inner circle, or conversely, a senior official who is being blackmailed by the circle.
So the traitor might not be doing it for ideology. They might not love Germany. They might be doing it because the circle has a gun to their head, figuratively speaking.
Exactly. The webs of loyalty are tangled and hidden. A man might betray his country to save his reputation within the circle, or to pay off a gambling debt that the circle holds over him. Pitt realizes that the official organizational chart on the wall means absolutely nothing. The real chain of command is hidden.
That makes the investigation a complete nightmare. You can't trust anyone.
No one.
Yeah.
You can't just walk in and ask, who is the traitor? Because the traitor won't be the man you're asking.
So Pitt has his marching orders, murder and treason. He heads to the police station. And this brings us to Section 5, the police station, and a fantastic clash of priorities. This scene really highlights how different Pitt is from the establishment.
It's a great scene. We meet Assistant Commissioner Giles Farnsworth.
And if Sir Arthur was the good aristocrat, the benevolent, conscientious father figure Farnsworth seems to represent the oblivious, self-important side of the establishment.
He's a gentleman through and through. The text notes that he prefers working with people of his own social class. He misses the previous superintendent, Micah Drummond, because Drummond was one of them. He views Pitt with reservation because Pitt is a gamekeeper's son. He's rougher. He doesn't have the polish.
And immediately there is a conflict. Farnsworth isn't worried about the German Empire. He's obsessed with a robbery.
Lady Warburton's diamonds.
It sounds like a parody, doesn't it? Forget the potential collapse of our colonial ambitions. We need to find this sparkly necklace.
It perfectly illustrates the warped priorities of the era. To Farnsworth, a theft from a high society lady is a direct affront to the social order. It's visible. It's scandalous. It involves people who matter to him. Treason in the Colonial Office it's abstract. It's just paperwork and maps.
Farnsworth is basically saying, the Empire can wait, but Lady Warburton is upset now.
Yes, and they have this great argument about the telephone. I love this detail because it anchors us so perfectly in the technology of the time.
Farnsworth berates Pitt for not using the telephone to report the treason earlier. He calls Pitt old-fashioned. He thinks Pitt is just being stubborn, resisting progress.
But Pitt snaps back with a very sharp, very modern observation. He says, treason isn't a subject for the telephone, which is actually very smart tradecraft. The telephone was a new, insecure technology. Operators listened in on calls. Lines were crossed all the time.
It wasn't a secure line.
Not at all. Pitt realizes that if there are spies everywhere, the last thing you do is shout about them over an open line. So while Farnsworth sees it as Pitt being a Luddite, Pitt is actually being more professional. He understands security better than his own boss.
Ultimately, Pitt exerts his authority, or rather, the authority of the Foreign Office letter he's carrying. He effectively ignores Farnsworth.
He does. He dumps the diamond case on Inspector Tellman, poor Tellman, who hates high society cases more than anyone, and heads straight to Whitehall.
Which takes us to our final section. Section 6, inside the Colonial Office, the investigation begins.
The atmosphere shifts completely here. We move from the domestic garden and the dusty police station to the very corridors of power. And again, classes everywhere.
Pitt arrives, and he looks a bit rumpled.
To say the least. The book describes his pockets as being stuffed with things, evidence, notebooks, maybe a pipe. His tie is probably crooked. He's surrounded by diplomats in perfectly starched winged collars and striped trousers. He stands out like a sore thumb.
And he runs into the gatekeeper, this snooty junior clerk who tries to block him.
The clerk tries to brush him off, come back in 2 days, that sort of thing. But Pitt plays the Lord Salisbury card. He effectively bullies his way in by name-dropping the Prime Minister. It shows Pitt's growing confidence. He might not dress like them, but he knows how to scare them.
So he gets his meeting with the big boss, Linus Chancellor.
Chancellor is a fascinating character. He is the Secretary of State for Colonial Affairs. He's described as ambitious, charismatic, absolutely destined for high office.
The text says he has a wide mouth full of humor and volatility. He sounds like a modern politician, not a stuffy Victorian.
He is very modern. He's dynamic. He isn't dusty and formal like the others. He only gives Pitt 10 minutes because he's literally on his way to see the Prime Minister. But he immediately grasps the severity of the leak. He confirms that the Germans knowing about the mineral rights in Zambezia is a complete disaster.
So he gives Pitt the green light. Then Pitt moves down the ladder to the senior civil servant, a man named Jeremiah Thorne.
And Thorne is the perfect foil to Chancellor. If Chancellor is the slashy, ambitious politician, Thorne is the old money bureaucrat. He is the permanent secretary. Politicians come and go, but men like Thorne run the country, generation after generation. He is calm, assured, subtle. He doesn't need to be flashy because his power is structural. It's generational.
And Thorne gives us our suspect list. This is the clue portion of the episode, right? Who are we looking at?
Thorne outlines 3 main men who have access to this African intelligence. They are the only ones who could have leaked it.
Okay. Suspect number 1, Garston Aylmer.
Aylmer is Thorne's own assistant, a brilliant scholar. Got a first-class degree at Cambridge in classics and history. He's the intellectual of the group.
But here's the interesting detail. He lives in Newington.
which Thorne points out, with a little sniff, is an unfashionable area.
Aylmer.
Aylmer is 36, he's unmarried, and he lives in a modest house south of the river.
Why is that suspicious? To a modern ear, maybe he just likes the neighborhood or he's saving his money.
In Victorian London, your address was your resume. It was a public declaration of your status and success. If you are a brilliant rising star in the government, you should be living in a better neighborhood. It raises questions. Is he hiding a lack of money? Does he have gambling debts? Does he have a secret life he's funding? Or is he just eccentric? And in a world of rigid conformity, eccentricity is deeply suspicious.
Okay. Suspect number 2, Peter Annandale.
He specializes in Egypt and Sudan. We get less detail on him right now, but he's in the mix. He's described as younger, ambitious. He's one to watch.
And finally, suspect number 3, Ian Hathaway.
Hathaway is the most obvious suspect on the surface. He specializes in Zambezia, the exact area of the leak. He's older, about 50, a widower.
And the text mentions his son is a missionary.
Yes, Hathaway seems very respectable, very quiet, the son of a church official. But often, that's where the secrets are buried deepest. A widower. Is he lonely? Does he have financial strain? A son in trouble abroad. That is classic leverage for a blackmailer. Betray your country or we hurt your son. It's a textbook vulnerability.
So Pitt has his list of 3 men. What is his strategy? He can't exactly walk in and interrogate them about geopolitical policy.
No, and they're trained diplomats. They would run circles around him verbally. So Pitt decides to change the battlefield. He realizes he can't trust anyone inside the office, not even Thorne. So he decides to investigate their personal lives.
He's looking for the why, not the what.
Exactly. He's looking for leverage. Why would a British gentleman betray his country? Usually it's not for ideology. It's for something more personal. Debt, blackmail, or a secret vice. Pitt decides he has to dig into their finances, their romantic lives, their hidden closets. He knows that the Germans, or more likely the inner circle, would find and exploit those weaknesses.
It's incredibly invasive.
It is. He's going to turn over every stone in their private lives because he knows the clue to the treason isn't in a government file. It's in a gambling ledger or a secret love letter.
And that is where the opening chapters leave us. Pitt is standing on the edge of this massive investigation, armed with a long spoon and a list of 3 very respectable, very powerful suspects.
And he's fighting a war on 2 fronts. He has to find the traitor to save the empire's strategic position in Africa, and he has to expose the inner circle to save the reputation of his oldest friend's father.
It is such a heavy load, and what I love about this setup is how it intertwines the personal and the political. You can't solve one without the other, can you?
Absolutely not. The rot in the Colonial Office and the rot in the inner circle are likely coming from the same source. The corruption of the elite, the idea that they are above the law and even above loyalty to their own country.
So let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground, from a peaceful garden to the underground, from Cape Town to Heligoland. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive for you?
For me, the central theme is the violence of civility.
That's an interesting contradiction. Unpack that a little.
Well, we tend to think of violence as physical, a punch, a gunshot, and there is physical violence here, or the threat of it. But the real violence in this book is social. It's the inner circle destroying a man's reputation with a quiet whisper over brandy.
It's the Colonial Office carving up an entire continent with a fountain pen, completely ignoring the millions of people who actually live there.
Yes, and it's the rigid class structure that makes Pitt an eternal outsider in his own life, no matter how high he climbs. The polite, tea-sipping world is actually a brutal battlefield.
And the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, it's the ability to define the narrative. The inner circle killed Sir Arthur, but the real lasting violence was labeling him senile. They rewrote his history.
They killed his truth.
Which brings us to a really provocative thought to leave our listeners with.
Go on.
In a world like Victorian London, built entirely on reputation and social standing, is the destruction of a man's good name actually a more violent act than his murder?
It's a profound question. I mean, if you kill the man but leave his reputation intact, his legacy lives on, his ideas can still survive. But if you kill the reputation, you erase him completely. You turn a hero into a joke, a prophet into a madman.
And regarding the leak, think about Pitt's central problem. If the inner circle creates these webs of loyalty that supersede national duty, if a man is more loyal to his secret society than he is to his queen, how can Pitt possibly find the traitor using normal police methods?
He can't. The usual chain of command doesn't apply because the real chain of command is hidden from view. He has to step outside the system to save the system.
And that is always a dangerous place for a policeman to be.
A very dangerous place indeed.
Well, on that ominous note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of Traitors Gate. It is a murky, dangerous world, and I'm quite glad we're just reading about it and not living in it.
Absolutely. Though I wouldn't mind that apple tree in the garden.
The apple tree, yes. The treason and murder, definitely not. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Goodbye.